you are right where you need to be. Hello and welcome. I'm so glad you're here today. I want to start by asking you a question, and I want you to be honest with yourself. Do you ever look at your life and think, is this it? Do you feel like you're stuck in a waiting room, just looking for the door to your real life to finally open? Maybe you're waiting for a spouse, for a different job, for the kids to grow up, or just for a breakthrough that never seems to come. Maybe you feel like God has put you on pause. You see others moving forward, entering new seasons, and you're still here, in this place, in this job, in this circumstance. And the temptation is to believe that your current location, this season you're in, is a mistake. It's a sign of God's absence, or maybe even his disapproval. This feeling of being stuck, this belief that true life begins later, is a universal human struggle. But Scripture offers a profound and liberating perspective on our present circumstances. Today we're going to dive deep into one of the most powerful and peace-giving truths in all of Scripture. In God's sovereign plan, your current season, your location, and your circumstances, yes, even the challenging and frustrating ones, are not random. You are, right now, precisely where God intends for you to be for His glory, for your growth, and for a purpose you may not yet see. Let's explore what God's Word has to say about the place you are in right now. To truly find peace where we are, we have to start with the foundational, unshakable truth of God's sovereignty. Now, sovereignty can sound like a heavy, complicated theological word, but it's actually the most practical and stabilizing doctrine in the Christian life. It's the firm ground beneath our feet when the world around us feels chaotic. It is the anchor that holds us steady in the storm. At its core, God's sovereignty means that He is in absolute control. Nothing happens outside of His knowledge or His ultimate purpose. The book of Proverbs puts it this way: "The lot is cast into the lap, but the whole disposing thereof is of the Lord." Think about that. The casting of a lot was like flipping a coin, the most random, chance-driven event people in the ancient world could imagine. Yet Scripture says that even there, God is the one who determines the outcome. If that's true for something so seemingly random, how much more is it true for the significant seasons and locations of your life? The same God who masterfully created and ordered the universe also masterfully orders our lives. In Genesis we read, "And God said, Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs, and for seasons, and for days, and years." The God who ordained the seasons of the earth, spring, summer, autumn, winter, also ordains the seasons of our lives. The waiting, the preparing, the producing, and the resting. None of it is an accident. And this brings us to one of the most comforting promises in all of Scripture. From Romans chapter 8, "And we know that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are the called according to His purpose." Notice the careful wording here. It does not say that all things are good. That's simply not true. We live in a fallen world. We experience pain, frustration, and injustice. But the promise is that God works them together for good. He is the master weaver, taking the dark threads of suffering and the bright threads of joy and weaving them into a beautiful tapestry that serves His ultimate purpose. This promise validates the purposefulness of even our most difficult present realities. But it's one thing to know this truth in our heads. It's another to see how it plays out. So let's look at some people in Scripture who found themselves in places they never would have chosen. The Bible is not a collection of stories about perfect people who had easy lives. It's filled with the messy, complicated, and often painful stories of faithful men and women who were placed by God in difficult, confusing, or seemingly stagnant seasons. By examining their lives, we can uncover a divine pattern of God's preparation and purpose that applies directly to us today. Let's start with Joseph. His life was a masterclass in divine placement through painful circumstances. As a young man, he was betrayed by his own brothers, who, as Genesis 37 tells us, took him and cast him into a pit. That pit was not on his agenda. It was an unchosen place of darkness and despair. From there, he was sold into slavery, and just when things started to look up, he was falsely accused by Potiphar's wife and thrown into prison. Genesis 39 details the injustice. He fled from sin, yet ended up in a dungeon. Now, Joseph could have become bitter. He could have concluded that God had forgotten him. But what did he do in that prison? He didn't just wait for his release. He served right where he was. When Pharaoh's butler and baker had troubling dreams, Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me them, I pray you." He used his God-given gifts in the middle of his affliction, and it was his faithfulness in that prison that ultimately led to his elevation to the palace. Years later, reflecting on his journey, Joseph named his second son Ephraim, saying, "For God hath caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction." The very place of his suffering became the place of his fruitfulness, where God used him to save his family and the known world from a devastating famine. And Joseph isn't the only one. Consider Moses. After fleeing Egypt in fear for his life, he spent 40 years, 4 decades, as a shepherd in the land of Midian. The Bible describes the location of his great calling in Exodus 3 as the backside of the desert. It doesn't get more remote or forgotten than that. This wasn't a 2-week detour. It was a 40-year season of humbling and preparation, far from the prestige and power of the Egyptian court where he was raised. It was a long, quiet, unglamorous period of his life. But it was on that very mountain, on the backside of the desert, that God appeared to him in a burning bush and gave him his ultimate assignment to deliver Israel. The wilderness wasn't a waiting room. It was God's classroom. And what about the very people Moses was called to lead? The Israelites spent 40 years wandering in the wilderness. Their perspective was one of constant complaint. They looked back on their slavery in Egypt and said, "Would to God we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt when we sat by the flesh pots, and when we did eat bread to the full, for ye have brought us forth into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger." They saw their situation as a colossal mistake, but God saw it differently. For him, the wilderness was a divinely appointed season of testing, provision, and instruction. It was where he miraculously fed them with manna from heaven. It was where he led them personally with a pillar of cloud. Numbers 9 says, "Whether it were 2 days, or a month, or a year, that the cloud tarried upon the tabernacle, the children of Israel abode in their tents, and journeyed not. But when it was taken up, they journeyed." Their stuckness was actually God-ordained stillness. God was teaching them to depend on him for everything, and he was faithful. As Moses later reminded them in Deuteronomy 29:5, "And I have led you 40 years in the wilderness. Your clothes are not waxen old upon you, and thy shoe is not waxen old upon thy foot." From the pit to the palace, from the desert to deliverance, the pattern is clear. God places his people in unchosen places for his undeniable purposes. So, what does it actually mean to live out this truth in our own wilderness seasons? Trusting God's placement is not passive resignation. It's not about giving up and saying, "Well, I guess this is it." It is an active, faith-filled choice to partner with him in our present reality, believing that he is at work even when we can't see it. So how do we do that? It requires a few crucial mindset shifts. The first shift we need to make is to start stewarding our one talent faithfully. In the parable of the talents in Matthew 25, Jesus tells of a servant who was given 1 talent, but out of fear, he did nothing with it. He said to his master, "I was afraid, and went and hid your talent in the ground." The master called him a wicked and lazy servant. So many of us act like that servant. We look at our current season and think, "This isn't where I'm supposed to be, so I'll just wait until God moves me before I start using my gifts for him." We bury our talent. I want to challenge you today. What are the talents, the gifts, the resources, the relationships, the opportunities that God has given you in your current season? Maybe it's not a big platform. Maybe it's simply the ability to encourage a coworker, to be patient with your children, or to serve faithfully in a small ministry at your church. Be faithful with what you have, right where you are. God honors faithfulness in the small things, and it is often the very thing He uses to prepare us for more. The second shift is to cultivate contentment as an act of worship. Contentment is one of the most misunderstood virtues in the Christian life. It isn't about giving up on your dreams or pretending you don't have desires. Contentment is about finding your ultimate satisfaction in God Himself, not in your circumstances. It is a declaration of trust that says, God, you are enough for me today. Your provision for me in this moment is sufficient. The Apostle Paul writes in 1 Timothy, "Now godliness with contentment is great gain, for we brought nothing into this world, and it is certain we can carry nothing out. And having food and clothing, with these we shall be content." When we choose contentment, we are actively worshiping God. We are telling Him that our joy is found in His presence, not in our promotion, in His faithfulness, not in our finances. This shifts our focus from what we lack to the incredible abundance we already have in Him. The third and final mindset shift is this: pray for God's purpose, not just for your escape. Take a moment and think about your prayer life. When you pray about your difficult situation, what are you asking for? For many of us, our prayers are almost entirely focused on escape. God, get me out of this job. God, end this season of singleness. God, change my circumstances. Those prayers aren't necessarily wrong, but they are incomplete. I want to challenge you to shift your prayers, using Jesus' prayer in the Lord's Prayer as a model. Your kingdom come. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Start praying. God, what do you want to accomplish in me and through me in this season? Show me the purpose you have for me right here, right now. How can I bring your kingdom to this office? How can I reflect your will in this neighborhood? Let your will be done in this circumstance. When you start praying for His purpose instead of just your escape, your perspective will radically change. When we make these active choices to steward our gifts, cultivate contentment, and pray for His purpose, we begin to see the incredible fruit that God can produce in our lives, right where we are. Embracing this biblical mindset isn't just about gritting your teeth and enduring. It's the pathway to the very peace, purpose, and intimacy with God that we were seeking somewhere else. When we trust Him with our location, we begin to harvest beautiful spiritual fruit. The first fruit we see is a supernatural peace. The world tells us that peace is the absence of trouble. But the Bible shows us that true, supernatural peace is the presence of God in the trouble. When we know that our sovereign God has placed us where we are, we can stop striving and fighting against our circumstances and rest in His control. The psalmist understood this well, writing in Psalm 46, "God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore will not we fear, though the earth be removed." Our peace isn't rooted in a calm environment. It's rooted in the character of our ever-present God. That is a peace the world cannot give and cannot take away. And a second beautiful fruit that grows in these seasons is a much deeper relationship with God. Let's be honest, seasons of comfort rarely drive us to our knees. It's the difficult, unwanted, and confusing seasons that force us to rely on God in ways we never would otherwise. It's in the wilderness that we learn to trust Him for daily bread. It's in the prison that we learn He is our only hope. King David wrote many of the Psalms from places of deep distress and danger. In Psalm 18, he cries out, "In my distress I called upon the Lord, and cried unto my God. He heard my voice." Your current trial, as painful as it may be, is an invitation from God to draw nearer to Him, to depend on Him more fully, and to experience His presence in a way you never have before. Finally, a third fruit is that we become a sanctuary for others. When we are faithful in our difficult season, our lives become a powerful testimony to a watching world. When your coworkers, your neighbors, and your family see you trusting God while you're stuck, it gives them hope for their own situations. In the book of Ezekiel, God makes a promise to the people of Israel who were scattered in exile. He says, "Yet will I be to them as a little sanctuary in the countries where they shall come." God himself became their sanctuary in a foreign land. In the same way, by trusting God right where you are, your life can become a sanctuary, a place of his peace and presence, for others who are hurting and looking for hope. Trusting God with his placement brings peace to our souls, deepens our walk with him, and makes us a beacon of hope to others. So, let's bring it all together. That feeling that you are stuck, that you are in the wrong place, that your life is on hold, that is a lie. The truth of Scripture is that your current circumstances are not a divine oversight. They are a divine appointment. Joseph's prison was not a mistake. Moses' desert was not a detour. The Israelites' wilderness was not an accident. They were all integral, necessary, and purposeful parts of God's perfect plan. And the same is true for your life. So, take heart. Your Father knows where you are. He placed you there. He is with you there. And he has a glorious purpose for you. Right there. Trust him. If this message has encouraged you today, would you do 3 things? First, click the subscribe button so you don't miss our next video. Second, give this video a like to help others find it. And third, share this with someone you know who needs to hear this message of hope. And before you go, I want you to engage with me in the comments. I read everyone. In the comments below, I want you to answer this. What is one specific aspect of your current season you're choosing to trust God with this week, and how will that change your focus? I can't wait to read your answers and pray for you all. Thank you for joining me. Be blessed, and I'll see you in the next video.